All right. We are live, and we are on TW, YouTube, and Facebook. So I will hope that you catch the live. If not, you will watch this on both those platforms. My name is Joaquin Marquez, Joaquin Richmond, and we're going to make some little inboxes today. Fairly large show. Gathering of these stores, and depending on who makes these rooms, that constraint is going to be there. Operation. So makes room boxes and then but I have a new toy, so I'm pretty excited. Manual focus camera with zoom. These little webcams you see right here and right here. These are great, but they have autofocus, and it's supposed to be the overhead camera. Focus is on the floor. But I can't get a focus on what I'm actually doing right here. So really aggressive camera that's affordable and that has a manual zoom, manual focus, so I have control, and we're going to be able to tell me as low says Joe. We're going to be able to, how's that? Is that better, Joe? We're going to be able to see exactly what's going on right here in focus, which is a big deal. I will very soon be replacing this camera with the same thing, so that we can get in and zoom in. It's got a 10-time zoom. There's the webcams and these handy things are called. They only zoom about 6 times. And again, autofocus being as inefficient as it is, hopefully this will resolve all that. Joe, is the sound better? Please let me know. It should be a little bit better. Let's see. I can do this, and hopefully that'll get us a little bit better sound as well. I have my fan blowing. It's pretty warm, but it's also really humid. So I've got the fan going, and probably the automatic sound engine is quieting that down a little. So still working on it. It's all a work in progress, but I'm getting better levels on the mixer, so hopefully that's going to shut up. So what we got here is a piece of purple heart. Now generally you don't want to bottom your blank out in the chuck, however, holding this square 2x2 square piece. That I have held it this way previously. I've worked a little bit on this and used this. It's not going to be in the rope, it's not going to be in the piece. We're going to use primarily jam to hold the lid and turn that and make this little box. And so the box is only about this tall. We're going to end up using this one as a jam to hold it to the box so that we can finish it. And then we still have enough left over to do another box. Like I said, what this really is about is playing with the new toy with the new camera and working with it and getting used to using it and understanding its limitations. But we're not going to be very many. Give me just a second. And let's see what the boxes. Now, come on, get out here. Go over there. We've got this big button making a small little box. First of all, the space. You have limited amount of space for your tenants in the recesses. You really have to manage that. You want, I wear a size 13 in, which is about a little more than me. So you want an interior space probably about an inch and a half or so. Which when you use your 2 by 2 block like this, you start losing a lot of room to put things where you, with a bigger box, it's a lot easier in the world and your food and your horses are larger, you have more room. Here you don't have a lot of room to play with. So you really want to pay attention to exposed to the light and the air, it will start to open up into the areas. And then you'll react to the air, open the air that gives us that color. So never fear that you'll, yeah, perfect. So then the screw chisel here. The edge, compared to the bevel of the leg, make sure that is 290 degrees so you can get a good zoom. This will be the lid. Now, when you part this, you always want to put that part in a little bit wider than the field, and you use quarter-length parting field, first of all, to establish the tuning from the tip inside the body of the box until it goes. That tuning to be a little bit wider than this tuning. And the reason for that is because this is a thin tuning, that's a working tuning. Connecting the seam, but it's always under those 2 widths. Everything. You be very, very sure that side of that tuning is straight. You see that we're about a third again wider than the tool, but we're not going to actually cut that wide tool. And now what we do is middle parting tool. And then you're using whatever's in the tool, and looking down at whatever's in the wood. If you want to write it in the tool, that tool doesn't wind up and burn. Things don't go flat. Started. Back off the tailstock, flatten the surface. Again, this pen is smaller than this pen. This is our finished pen, this is our looking pen. Where we can widen this up to fit the finished piece. Have some space to work. This is going to be the number of the inside of the piece simply, and that's simply big enough to fit. Specifically ring boxes we're making, it's not going to be big. You have to be consideration for anything with trims and notices. Working box that is, we want to convert almost a suction fit versus a friction fit. Here's the fill. Straight edge, and a little bit of a recess. It's not big enough that it's going to have an effect on other spots. If it's too deep, we can buy that work. That's very shallow. It's not contact. So we're going to leave it to another thing here. This is a great idea to work on this criteria your surfaces. When we look at the review, and when we're working this small, when we're looking for also this thing about that. Pretty rare over years. So we will be careful with that. Very good. I quit. One of those days. Spent an hour and a half this morning just setting up and twisting cameras and moving things and discovering that I've lost things and misplaced them. Suspend a camera mount from above. So we're doing that right now. So we're just going to take this measurement here, slow the weight down, when you look closest point to move through the wood. If you touch this one, it's squeeze where you can. Move it. Touch that. See, touch this surface, and that should be perfect to fit our pen here. Over it. But what we're going to do is while sweeping up on that line, we're going to come to the line. We're not going to cut all the way through short of it. And widen a little bit at a time until we have a good one fit, so that we can put the inside of the sleeve. So just a tiny bit. cutting tool. We're just going to touch it up with a diamond point, a 400 diamond point. Into the bird. Bird is very what actually does the work. Cutting very much like a screen. With this test, we come into the point. Come into the point. Come across. But you've got to kind of clear out that just tell the end to straight in. You can use that. That is really difficult. Now, you want to look down the shaft of the tool, and you want to make sure that your shaft is lined up with the bed weight of the load, so that we're cutting parallel walls. Very good. Now we look down the tenon, the tenon, and line it up with the bed weight of the load, and that's how we make sure that we have parallel walls on the tenon. And that's what's going to get us a secure and fit. Again, we're seating up on this. A little bit more. Close. What we want. Still have the one here. You really can't see very well on this one, but I still have it now. It's working. Again, as you see it, I'm lining up the shaft of the tool with the bed of the load. This part is important because this really is going to focus on power. What's that power line? And then it's, I just kind of really know that I never did the part. Now, put it in a miniature screw. You can take a much finer cut with a miniature screw. Bring it up about 45-degree angle. Just bring in quick and that removes very, very fine. One layer of silk wood. pull this a little. You can come back and use this as a negative paper and straight. What I feel is needed a little bit more practice in this time. Figure out what works best for you. You have options here. Now, as precise as this fit's going to be, the fit for this one is not going to be as close. You don't want it to be as tight. All right, you can't hear me. Hang on a second. Okay, how's volume now? Is the volume better? Chisky Wood Creations, is that volume better? Let me know, please. Because I'm redlining on my app. I'm redlining here. Yes, okay. All right, let's try that. So, again, when you come in, thank you, Greg. When you come in, very, very light. We need this jam to be very, very tight. Because we're going to be hollowing with it, we need to flip it over and fit a finish jam. It's not going to be anywhere near as tight. You don't want to be wrestling with the box to get the ring out. Yeah, you can got it. You can do some light tappy taps here with the having out. Now we can clean it up a little, make it a tiny bit smaller. But we really, that's kind of a finish width tenon for the lid. And again, you don't want to pressly pull a ring box apart. So this is not going to be near as tight a fit as this, but this has to hold it. When I walk away from the computer, interesting, hang on.
How is this audio? Thank you. You just told me what I did. I accidentally switched to the computer mic from my headset, and I've been running through my headset. Is that better? I moved to the lathe and yeah, I did. I had the wrong microphone on. So thank you. Good catch. Appreciate it. I'm more worried about the new camera, about getting this thing working. Okay, so again, what we're talking about here is this tenon here. That's going to be our final tenon. It's wider than the tenon we just put in for clearing, okay, for turning. That's, again, so that we could get this in there tight enough that we can hollow out the end here. But we can clean this tenon up. We can take and we want to be able to open it up a good fit. What we don't want is this is a really hard jam fit. We don't want that on the finished box. You want to be sitting there wrestling with your ring box trying to get it open to get to the ring. So that's to be considered. Is it the finished product, the end product? We want to be able to make sure that that's going to loosen up while we're sanding. We are going to use the mini skew here and just touch this up. Make sure that it's clean. Just clean it up a little bit like that. Again, looking down and make sure that your tenon is parallel to the lathe bed. That's going to give you an absolutely perfectly square fit tenon. And that's how you get that good jam. And then a little trick. If you put just a tiny little groove in the bottom, a little bit of a V right there. If you do have a good tight fit, that little V allows air to get in so that you can rock it a little bit and it'll pop open. So just a little trick to make it an easier fit is to put just a little tiny V right in the bottom. Doesn't have to be much, a tiny little groove. And that makes your finished box open and close easier because air has somewhere to go. So the consideration is that is this. Wood turners, we want a satisfying pop of a good friction fit, right? Customers want to be able to use the box. So we have to find a medium where the box is functional, closes well, but also the customer can get in and out of it. All right, we're going to use the drill and pull method here. Tailstock or tool rest is a little bit high, and I need to put a quick edge on this 3/8" spindle gouge. There we go. Should do it. So, drill and pull method, we're going to come in with the tool at about 45 degrees and just push it straight in, drilling. And then I actually like to call this the drill and push method because I don't pull with my left hand. What I do is I drill in and then I just push the handle away from my body with my right hand, using my left hand as a fulcrum. And that allows me a very nice, controlled, even cutting motion. Just like that. And I get a nice, clean, very, very smooth surface with a good, clean slicing cut. So I'm going to just take that a little bit further. Bring this area out. And then we want to make sure that we have a nice flat surface here. Just doing a bit of a shear scrape with the wing of the tool. Very, very light cut. Oof. There we go. That is a more than finishing ready surface right there. That's a really pretty Purple Heart. Now, if you're not getting the purple out of your Purple Heart that you think you should be purpling, heat does wonders with your Purple Heart. A little bit of warmth. I do have a spray bottle of water right there, and I have a fire extinguisher within 4 feet of me. So you're not trying to burn it. You just want to warm it up a little and get that purple to purplize. Start getting that color to come out. So that's one way to do it. A better way, set it out in the sun. A better way is just give it a little bit of time, and we're going to generate some heat when we're sanding it. So if it's not purpley enough, give it a minute. All right, we're going to start. We could get away with starting with 240. So my personal rule of thumb is if I think I can get away with starting at 240, I will step back to 180. And that guarantees that I'm going to sand away any tool marks or anything that I can't see that would probably develop, and I would see if I started at 240. So we're just going to come in, lightly sand that. And I'm going to teach you a few finishing tricks I use. So the first thing I do is I reverse the lathe. If you're able to reverse the lathe, I highly recommend sanding in both directions. If you think about the shape of a grain of wood, and we're end grained here, so if you think about it, is you've got a stack of straws, right? That wood grain is a sack of straws. And those straws all have edges. So if you just sand one edge of the straws, you're picking up that far edge, right, and you're sanding it, and that sandpaper comes up out and sharpens the other edge. So if you reverse the lathe and sand that in both directions, you sand down the sharp edge of the end of the straw on both sides, and you get a softer edge. That translates to a shinier finish. So we sanded 180 in both directions. Now we're going to hit this with a little denatured alcohol, or not denatured, rubbing alcohol, isopropyl. The reason I use alcohol to clean it and raise the grain rather than water is water does the same thing. The liquid soaks into the end grain, that end grain expands, okay, and you're going to sand it and sand back that expanded grain and you're going to get a smoother surface, right? Well, the reason I used alcohol instead of water is because that's dry. In the span of me explaining why I'm using it, it's dry. Water would take about 20 minutes. Yeah, sanding, being able to reverse it really makes a difference in sanding. If you can't reverse it, it's okay. It's not the end of the world, and there are a lot of professional turners who've been doing it for a long, long time on a lathe that never reverses, whether it's capable of it or not. But like Richard Raffin, brilliant wood turner, world famous demonstrator, and he doesn't reverse his lathe. And he turns amazing award-winning pieces. So it's not the end of the world, but it can mean that you have to do a little bit more work. Okay, 240. Nice. Nice. So we sanded in reverse. We'll flip it back to the correct way. We'll have in my little Laguna reverse switch issue. Known issue. All you have to do is blow the dust out, but I have a replacement if I need to. And then we're going to do a little trick I learned from Wayne Clasper, who's a Scottish wood turner and demonstrator. And I learned this from Wayne. He demonstrates here on YouTube every Wednesday night before the 7 p.m. meeting of the Worldwide Wood Turners, which is at midnight in Scotland. And then he comes to our wood turning meetings. And he gave a demonstration and taught us a little bit about sanding sealer. And so we're going to put that trick into effect. So this is 320. If you haven't had the chance to see Wayne demonstrate, I highly recommend you go to his YouTube channel and check out some of his demos. Wayne is a brilliant turner. His YouTube lives he's got earworms. He's got other turners who join him, and it ends up being a conversation, and it ends up being quite entertaining. And the wood turning is almost a backdrop to the commentary, which is a lot of fun. But if you're paying attention to what Wayne's doing, you really can learn a lot. So 320. And what we're going to do now is going to clean it real quick. At this point, the grain that was going to swell and get sanded away has already swollen and been sanded away. I'm just removing that 320 grit so that when we sand it at 400, we're not putting 320 grit scratches in it that we have to sand away with the 400. It's a little trick I learned from a furniture maker. So we're going to hit it with 400. Not that piece of 400. It's dirty. I've been making finials with ebony and African blackwood. That transfers. We're going to hit it with 400 here in both directions. And then we're going to no longer reverse the lathe. There's that little dust problem I was telling you about. There we go. Just blow out the switch. It clears it up. I have a new switch to replace it with, but I'm going to use that one until it's dead. Okay, so at 400, that's really nice and smooth. That's really glassy. Feels good. We're just going to wipe that out. Now, you can use all kinds of sanding sealers. What I have here is a 2-pound cut of Super Blonde de-waxed shellac from Old World Shellac and Everclear. If you go to Old World Shellac, it breaks down what the cuts are, how much shellac to how many ounces of alcohol. You could use denatured alcohol instead of Everclear. The reason I use Everclear is I want this to be food safe, and that is debatably food safe. That is debatably food. I want this to be food safe. Shellac is food safe. So I use a edible alcohol. You can cut this with well vodka. You don't have to use Everclear, but it does have an higher alcohol content, which means that's dry. So I can now apply sanding paste to it. And for the sanding paste, I go to my little fridge. I live in North Carolina, and we are definitely into the warm season. And so anything that has wax in it melts just in room temperature. So I have to keep it refrigerated. I got one of those little cute little mini fridges. Works wonders. Works great. Keeps my finishes from liquefying, and my sanding paste as well. This is Brad's Workbench extra fine sanding paste. I am sponsored by Brad's Workbench, but even if I wasn't, I would tell you this is his sanding paste and finishes are the best that I've found on the market. Which is why I'm sponsored by him, because I was selling his sanding paste before I even knew him, and he contacted me and said, "Hey, I hear you talking good stuff about my stuff. You know, you want to kind of work something out?" And I said, "Yeah." So, but even if he hadn't, I'd still tell you this is the best I've found on the market. So you start with the wet part of the paper towel with your lathe slow. I'm on the middle speed band here, so it's about 320 RPM. You flip over to a clean piece of paper towel, kick it up 100 RPM. You just keep repeating that, work it, flip over to a clean piece of paper towel, kick it up 100 RPM until the paper towel comes away clean, at which point you're no longer removing any material. Now you notice I didn't really seal or sand or anything here. I want this surface to be rough. That's going to help get that friction fit that I want for that lid. So although I want it to be rough, I do hit it with the sanding paste to make sure that I remove any splinters or anything that might catch in somebody's skin. So in my experience with Brad's Workbench, by the time you're at 1,000 RPM, you're no longer removing material. We're already no longer removing material. We have a really nice shiny finish here. And that's not finished. That's just finish ready. We're going to use Brad's Workbench Tongue Honey, which is pure tongue oil, beeswax, and carnauba wax for the final finish on that. But that is now ready to be finished. Now, that was a really good jam, and we really had to pound that in there, right? All you got to do, get a little purchase on it. I'm actually moving the whole piece in the chuck. So drastic measures is we just turn away that recess, and we can pull it out and we resurface and make a new recess to hold the lid. Don't think we're going to have to get there. I have some other tricks, but see, nope, that's a really good jam. That is a really good jam. So the other thing we can do is use our 1-inch skew chisel as a wedge. See if we can wedge that in there. Get her to start coming loose. Well, it doesn't look like it wants to. Oh, there it goes. We might get it. Be careful when you're doing this. This is razor sharp intentionally. So pay attention to which direction energy is facing. Yeah, that's not going to come out. That's a really good jam. Pay attention to which direction energy is facing so that if you slip, you don't run it into yourself. That skew chisel will cut me wide open. And I have the scars to prove it. And a nice one right there from bumping it. Okay, what we're going to do, a little light cut here. Let's see if we can try not to lose too much. Ooh, she does not want to budge. All right, we're just going to turn it off. Not the end of the world at all. That might be it. Oh, we got to go a tiny bit deeper. Not much. Come out, you. That's a good jam. Should be able to, should be just about thin enough we can break the sides of that. Yep, there she goes. So we turned that almost paper thin there. No worries, because we need to surface this anyway to cut our next recess, which is going to get our final fit for the lid so that we can turn the outside of the lid. So not the end of the world. Before I owned a chuck, I did all of my boxes using a jam like that. So I'm pretty experienced in having to turn away your jam. And that actually wasn't too bad. All right, now, remember we left this tenon just a wee bit wider, which gives us room to work. Slow the lathe down, bring your tool rest up just about centered, because that tool is definitely thinner than the 3/8 inch shaft of that spindle gouge. Touch only this point. We're going to give ourselves a little line. That looks a little bit big. Let's see, where are we at? No, we're right there. We're exactly where we need to be. Okay. We're going to do the same thing. We're going to sneak up on that. So first we'll do a quick drill and pull with the 3/8 inch spindle gouge and just clear some material. Just like that. Okay. Now we're going to come back in with our parting tool again. Again, sighting straight down. Start sighting straight down the shaft of the tool and making sure that we are parallel to the bedway of the lathe. Now, something I want you to see, and I'm not sure if that was evident or not. But I'm going to describe it, and I'm going to try to zoom in a little so that you can see it. This tool, 90 degrees to the shaft here, but sides are at 40 or at 15 degrees, 30 degrees cumulative, 15 each. So as this tool gets deeper into the piece, into what we're cutting, the side of that rides up, has a tendency to ride up and push the point out. So when you're doing that straight in cut, if you're not careful, and I'm going to see if it's really subtle. Let's zoom in here. See if I can get focused. There we go. Okay, it's really subtle. Can you tell? Do you see how that's moving closer to the center as I slide it in deeper? Let's do this with the lathe spinning. So I'm going to catch that edge, and I'm cutting. I've got this tool pointed as straight as I can, and I'm coming in, and if I don't lock that tool with my left hand as I ride in, you're going to see it creep. The deeper I go, the more it's going to creep that way, because the angle of that tool is riding the curve of the round piece of wood. So it's riding outward because of that cut. So when you do this, you need to really sight and really watch. You really don't even watch the cut. Normally you're going to look over here and look at the shadow. You don't even look at that. You want to look at the shaft of that tool and make sure it stays parallel. So I'm actually pulling the shaft of the tool so that the tip is held against the wall, against the inside wall of the piece, and I'm sighting down the bedway to make sure that I am keeping that straight and getting a dead straight cut. Does that make sense? Well, we'll back you out a little. That's mighty close, but hey, I have that capability now of getting you in there. In focus, and that is a really cool capability. Yes, so what you're getting is it's wider at the bottom, it's wider down at the depth of the cut than it is on the outside. So you get this nice tight fit, except it keeps getting tighter and tighter when you jam them. So you've really got to pay attention to the angles of your tool. And there are some parting tools. This one isn't quite, now this I made, but there are parting tools with a design to try to counter that. So the design of this tool, where the part where the cutting point is, the distance. If you draw a line, the distance from the center here, from the point of that parting tool. This is a terrible line. It's shaky. From the point of that parting tool is further to the top than it is to the bottom. Now, really, that should be all the way down there, but I really didn't want to spend all that time grinding that day. I was just banging together a parting tool. But some of those, like you'll see the Sorby thin parting tool, thin curve parting tool, you'll see is really tall, and it's got a really long slope down to a tiny little edge, and that's to try to help offset that. Okay? So it just, if you're conscious of it, if you're aware of it, you can offset it yourself using tools. But the reason that you can be so precise with the mini skew or even a regular skew, the reason you can be so precise is because what you're putting in there, that little point is cutting, and you've got this really, really narrow piece of metal here. So it really can't ride out because it's not thick enough to have enough. I mean, it is riding out, but it's not thick enough to really kind of exaggeratedly push out and give you an angle. It's a lot easier using a skew chisel in a kind of a 45-degree up and down position where this is what you're aligning with the bedway of the lathe, and you come in. That is going to keep you straighter, and that's why you'll usually see me finish adjusting my recesses using a skew chisel, either this one or my half-inch skew chisel. I'll usually finish those with that skew chisel because you have a much, much more precise cut with less of that angle kick out. So it's just something to be aware of. It really depends on what you're doing, whether it ever is going to have an effect on your work. But when you're trying to jam and be precise on something small, it definitely has an effect on your work. But be aware of it, and as long as you're aware of it, you can actually position yourself, the way you hold the tool and the way you hold your body, to counteract that outward push and get a straight parallel cut. Just by holding that tool, hold that shaft of the tool back towards you, because it wants to kick out. So if you just prevent it from kicking out and hold it towards you, you won't have that problem. All right, and I'm intentionally working up to it. Again, I want a good jam, good enough to turn the outside of the tool, and good enough that when I sand it, it's going to loosen up to make it a usable piece for the customer. But while I'm working it, I don't want it to come loose. So on some wood, if the grain is definite enough, you can actually see layers of grain as you do that. You can actually see the layers of grain inside. All right, so that's going to be the tight jam that I just had that I had to cut away. If I push that in there, I'm going to have that tight jam. So now we're going to go to the skew because it's far more precise, and we're going to loosen that up a little bit. So again, I'm aligning this surface up with the bedway of the lathe. Very, very fine cut. Maybe 2 layers of cells if you were looking at it under a microscope. That would do it, but it's still too tight. That should be it. That should be our fit. Boom. Nice, precise fit. And that'll be functional. Hey, Scott, howdy, howdy. Now, I have a little indentation here from my live center. I'm going to bring the live center back up, and that's going to help me hold this so that I don't spin it. But if you want to loosen this for usability, one way you can do it is while you have this in the chuck, you can spin it by hand, and that friction will burnish that and smooth out that tenon. But also sanding is really going to smooth that out from the inside there of the recess. So you have a couple of different ways you can kind of give your customer advantage. At this point, that's a wood turner's fit, which is great. All the wood turners are like, oh, that's the way I want it to do it. But your customer's going to go, I can't get this box open. What's in there? So where's it going? If it's going for a wood turning competition, keep that tight fit. If it's going to a nice young lady who's getting an engagement ring, maybe make it fit a little more reasonably. Okay. Go back to our 3/8" spindle gouge. And these are very simple. We're not really embellishing these. We're not doing any bells and whistles. I want simple, clean, just simple little ring boxes. And we're going to end up having to turn that down a little, but we can at least kind of get some shape here. We want it a little bit deeper. So that's where the bottom of our little ring box is going to be. And then we're going to take a point tool and we're going to celebrate that joint. I have a little bit of an angle in it. I'm just going to come in with a point tool and just widen that out. Just so if you need to get a purchase on it, you can get a fingernail in there or whatever. But again, we're going to loosen that up. We're going to loosen that up so that that's going to come open. It's going to be accessible for a customer. And so at this point, we can start kind of turning down to there. Take that little point out. So just a nice, light, even cut. Let the tool do the work. Very precise. Take one more pass. Very nice, light cut. And then we'll start working the little nib away. The nubbity nub, as our friend Steve from across the pond likes to call it. Just turn away that nubbity nub. We're about out of nub. Again, we have more than enough jam here. All right, now we are going to do a little decorating here. We're going to do a little bit of embellishment. But again, this is fairly simple. We're kind of keep this kind of light. I'm sorry I can't zoom this camera in more. I'm going to purchase another one of the above camera, and that's going to replace this camera. We're going to turn this into a decent studio here. All right. So we're going to do a little bit of embellishing. We're going to turn that away. Again, very light touch. Now I have absolutely nothing but my friction jam here, right? Nothing else is holding this but friction. So I definitely don't want to go ramming in there, jamming that tool in there. Just going to go a nice, light, even cut. And I don't know if you saw that or not, but I gave it a little bit too much pressure and it popped loose. Okay? So that's why you got to really, really take care. You got to be real careful. Is that just rattled it? There was enough vibration that it rattled it loose. So really pay attention. And you'll notice instead of freaking out, jumping, what I did was I put pressure with the heel of the gouge against that lid to hold it on while I reached over and stopped the lathe. Don't overreact. Understand the forces involved and understand that you have control. All I have to do is just put a little pressure here. I leaned my body left, used my finger to kind of as an extension and pressed down and just held it against there so that I could reach over and stop the lathe. Nothing to panic about. Just understand the forces that are involved. Keep your cool and fix it. Relax. Relax. This is supposed to be fun. All right, we're going to slow the lathe down a little bit to about 450 RPM-ish. 550. We'll go 550 RPM. And I have this fun little tool. I love it. It is a knurling tool. This is a machinist tool. It's supposed to go on a CNC lathe. And this is what gets the little ridges like in the lighter so that you can flick your lighter. That's that tool. But it does cool things on wood. Well, that's as much as I'm going to be able to get because we've created that friction. But what we've got, see the little pattern? See the little ridges? A little spiral. That's really kind of neat. So it gives us some character. And then, just to help delineate it, we're going to come in, and we got a decent jam, we're going to come in with our detail tool, right? We're just going to touch right at the inside of our little spiral. And right at the outside of our little spiral. Kick our speed up a little. Now I'm pushing straight in. All my pressure is going straight in. So I'm not going to bounce that out again. And I'm not jamming really hard, so I'm not going to stop it and let it spin, which will loosen that jam even further. But there we go. So we have a little bit of pattern on our lid. Just have a fun little bit of pattern, and we're going to play with that in a minute. And then we've got a nice line delineating the inside and the outside, just to divide that. Okay. Now, well, are we going to sand it away? No, we're not. We're going to, this is where I'm going to break my rule. I can get away with starting at 240 because I don't want to sand off my pattern. We're going to start at 240. But before we do that, let's look at the other side here. Let's look at this shape. Okay. So we've got our definition. Whoop. See, you get that fingernail in there. We still have a pop. We still have a pop. Let's see. Hear it? We still have a pop. That's a friction fit. We still have a pop. That's why we celebrated that edge there. Okay. But the body is angled and this lid is angled, so the body is actually angled so your fingers slip off of it, so you have to dig a fingernail to get it open. Well, you don't want to break that fingernail, so we're going to change the shape of this a little bit. Face shield back on. 3/8 spindle gouge. Tool rest is a touch high. Pick up that cut. And we want to celebrate that a little bit more. Now, if I push this straight in, I'm going to shoot that lid right off. What I'm doing is actually same as I was doing with the parting tool when I was cutting the mortise. I'm actually pulling it to the left. So I'm getting that little groove, but it's all going that way. So I'm creating, I still have that little bit of a lip, and that's going to allow me to get my fingernail in there and pop that lid off. But I'm not pushing the lid off as I do it, okay? And for a shape that's a little more conductive, I can just use my fingertips. I can bounce that lid all over the place. See, this is why we like to keep a pile of sawdust on the ground so that when we shoot the lid of our little box off, it has a soft landing. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Hang on, let me figure out where it bounced to. Oh, where's the lid? Uh-oh, where is the lid? Little lost lid, where'd you go? Uh-oh. We may have a problem. Houston, we may have a problem. Hang on a second here. See, these things always happen live when we're explaining. When I'm explaining something, that's when I do things like lose little pieces and stuff. If I'm just turning by myself, this doesn't happen. But when you demonstrate, if it's going to go wrong, oh, that's the time. See, face shield, got it. It bounced into the leg of my lathe. It's usually where they end up. All right. So we have just enough of a friction fit that we get a pop, which is what we want. So we're going to sand. Before anything else happens, we'll sand. Yeah, that's the reasons for shaving. So you got to forgive me for a second. My allergies are acting up. I apologize. We're in the midst of first initial spring blooms and second summer blooms and yeah, all of the pollen. All of the pollen. All right, 240. We start this with 240. Hot puppy. Slow the lathe down. About 500 RPM ish. And we're just going to go light. We don't want to sand away our texture, but we do want to make sure there are no sharp surfaces. We'll sand in reverse. And we're going to embellish that texture in a few minutes, just so that that stands apart and really has a kind of a neat little look to it. I'm coming across the middle here. We've got a little bit of a spot right here in the middle, so I'll just come directly across it and make sure that that's smoothed out. Blow away some excess. We will hit it with the alcohol. Oof. That's going to start to darken up quite a bit. Beautiful. This is going to get set out in the sun, and it'll get nice and deep purple. So, and you can see it starting to darken as we're working it, starting to get some color. The other reason I use alcohol to raise the grain instead of water is if it is taking its time, hit it with the compressor. It's clear. It's dry. Dry enough to sand. 320 grit. Again, both directions. If you have good, smooth cuts, you end up not needing to sand a whole lot. You really don't. You're just making sure you have an even surface, but there's no tool marks. There's nothing to catch on. It's just a good, nice, clean surface. Okay? We're going to clean it again before we add, or before we hit it with 400. And we're going to clean it before we add the sanding sealer. You can also sand with the grain. I really haven't been doing that. I'll do it at the 400. But sand with the grain, and that helps make sure you don't have any circular marks. Where did I put that 400? Now, if you're not taking time explaining everything you do, you can get to the point where you're knocking out one of these little ring boxes every 20, 25 minutes, maybe even 15. They're not complicated. In a lot of ways, they kind of make themselves. They're very simple. And it's just taking the time to explain my reasoning for each step. That is why it takes a little longer when we're demonstrating like this. All right, so just going with the grain so that any little scratches are hidden in the grain of the wood. They're still there. There are still 400 grit scratches, but instead of going perpendicular to the grain, they're going parallel with the grain, and your eye can't see them. So a little magic trick, fool the human eye. We'll clean it once more, and then we'll hit it with our sanding sealer. You can use, there are all kinds of sanding sealers on the market. There's shellac-based sanding sealers. There's cellulose sanding sealers. I prefer Mylans. There's a lot of chemicals in that. There's poly sanding sealers. There are a lot of sanding sealers on the market. Again, I'm using the de-waxed Super Blonde shellac and a 2-pound cut with Everclear, which is a food-safe sanding sealer. Who's going to eat anything that's in a ring box? Nobody. But I try to keep all my finishes food safe. So, do what you want. That's just what I do. Something to know about this, too, about shellac sanding sealers or just shellac finishes is you can use friction on them. You can turn them into a friction finish. Shellac makes a really beautiful friction polish. You may have heard of a shellac friction polish by another name, OB Shine Juice. So that's dry. That's touchable. That's workable. So we're going to come in again with the Brad's Workbench sanding paste. Doesn't take a lot on an object this small. In fact, that's too much. Just with the lathe stopped, work it into your surfaces. You can feel it starting to grab. That's what you want. It's an abrasive paste. It needs to grab. Start the lathe at the slowest. It's about 320 RPM. Wet part of the paper towel. You just work it in. Make sure you have a smooth coat. Flip over to a dry part of the paper towel. Kick it up 100 RPM. Now, remember that this is a friction fit and it's loose enough that it'll come off. So I'm always going to keep one finger on the end pushing the lid closed so that the lid doesn't spin on me and it doesn't pop loose and go flying again. And I can still get good friction. I've got good leverage. Kick it up 100 RPM, clean part of the paper towel. When the paper towel comes away clean, you're no longer removing material. You're just buffing at that point, and we're about there. We had a really nice surface. The sanding sealer helps with that. And that is a solid, really nice, clean finishing surface. Look at that. That's beautiful. Now, I told you we were going to make this stand out. We're going to embellish out a little bit. So what we're going to do is I have a couple of embellishing waxes. There they are, which probably need to go back into the fridge. And I think we're going to use turquoise. So this is just metallic luster embellishing wax. I get it from Hobby Lobby. It's not expensive. And it's got a bit of a cream texture, I guess. It's starting to dry. Once this stuff is dry, it's done. You're done. You're not going to be able to use it. It gets real solid, and you have to sand it off. So you want to make sure that you are very careful in application, that you don't get it everywhere, because you will have to sand it off. And what I'm doing is highlighting the high spots. And then I'm going to come to a clean part of the paper towel. Make sure I don't have any of that on there. and just wipe away any excess. And that's it. And then I'll put my finish on over the top. We're going to finish this with Brad's Workbench Tongue Honey. So there we have just a flash of color, a little metallic sparkle. That just makes it stand out. It just makes it a little special. So, metallic luster. I've got Gold Rush, which is a real bright gold. I've got a rose gold. I've got the turquoise, and I've got the silver. And this stuff works really cool. It's just something neat if you want to give it a little bit extra. So, put that in here. It's time to break the fridge out again. And we're ready to hollow our box. Now, you want to finish the outside and keep this jammed before you hollow your box, because once we start taking these walls away, we lose all that support, and this will actually loosen up a little bit more just from there not being any body in there holding it. So just be aware. And again, we'll use the drill and pull method. Get my face shield. Come in with 3/8 inch spindle gouge, holding it at about a 45-degree angle. Drill in. And again, I push the handle away. I don't pull the point. I push the handle away and let the blade do the work. And we need to be careful about our depth. This is a small box, and it's really easy to just cut all the way through and go past what you set your depth as. And I'm about there. 2 passes. And yeah. So there's, put my depth gauge in. That's where I'm at. I want to undercut the bottom a little. So 2 passes. That was all the hollowing it needed. Okay? Be careful of that. It's real easy to get excited. Oh yeah, we're hollowing, blah blah blah, and gone. Stuff's done. It's over. So we're gonna work out the edges here. Feel our surface. We've got a nice surface. Yeah, okay. I'm just going to come in and just use my box scraper, a square end box scraper of my own design, somewhere. Did I throw it on the floor? Where's my scraper? Ah, nope, not that one. Uh-oh, where's my scraper? Oh, there it is. Okay. This is my box scraper. We're just going to come in and just work out this little edge to the corner right here. Not really going any deeper in the middle at all, just on the edges. There we go. That should give us a really good surface. Oh yeah. Very nice, sandable, finishable surface right there. Which is what we're going to do. Very simple project. Yep, that's exactly what I do. What's up, Monchichi? How you doing, brother? Good to see you, man. All right, we're going to break the rules again here. We could start at 240. We don't need to get any lower than that. We have a very, very, very nice finishable surface here. Slow the lathe back down. About 500 to 550 RPM is where I like to sand. Now I'm not sanding the inside of that mortise, but I'm not avoiding. If I bump it, it's okay. Again, we don't want that wood turner's hard pop fit. That's not what a customer is going to want to work with. Sand in both directions. Oh, if you do have a reversible lathe, take your lathe to a complete stop before you reverse it. You will burn out your motor faster than anything if you just flip it, hit reverse. Don't do that. That's an expensive repair. 240. Raise grain. Clean out that 240 grit before we hit it with 320. Voila, it's dry enough to keep sanding. You really could, I'm not saying do this, but you could get away after scraping the inside with grabbing a handful of shavings and burnishing and walk away and call it finished. And there are a lot of turners who do. And there's nothing wrong with that. You could get away with that. The only people who would know would be other turners. So if you're trying to turn 30 of these in a week, which I'm not. Ooh, bro, not fun. But you could get away with it. You could get away with just burnishing that and calling it done. Absolutely could. I wouldn't hold it against you. All right, a little alcohol again. Again, we're just cleaning away the 320 grit before we hit it with 400. Now, while you're sanding, it's okay to come in and check and make sure you still have a good enough fit that you haven't blown it apart, which this is perfect. This is exactly the fit you want for a little ring box. So I definitely don't want to sand that at all. If I bump it, it's okay, but I really don't want to concentrate on sanding it because the sanding paste is going to do what it's going to do regardless. A little 400 grit in both directions. Yeah, that's okay. I dropped the lid and I dropped the lid and lost it in the shavings for a second. It's a day, you know how things go. I had a piece of American chestnut that was beautiful, but had bad ring shake in it that you couldn't see until you got it turned. And I got it down to a bowl and was like, why is this not cutting even? And I turned the lathe off and I looked at it and I went, and opened up 2/3 of the bowl, had a ring shake in it, and it was like, I'm done. You're done. You're done. Okay, clean it one more time. We'll do our sanding sealer, and then we'll hit it with the sanding paste. Yeah, shavings are great for burnishing. Absolutely. And there are objects that I have turned that have a burnished finish. My 3-wing bowl out of camphor burl is burnished with camphor, with shavings from the bowl. And that's because if you hold the bowl in your hands, if you hold the bowl like this in your hands, it starts to warm up, and the whole room fills with the smell of camphor. It's beautiful. All right, 2-pound cut, super blonde de-wax shellac in Everclear. Technically, you could drink this. And if you don't think shellac is food safe and that you could consume it, Why don't you ask M&M Mars why your M&Ms are shiny? Because it's got shellac sprayed on it. All right, little friction. That's dry. A sanding paste. Yeah, oak. Oh, burnished oak is so pretty. Oh, is burnished oak gorgeous? Not only that, but so here's my favorite tool handle. This is ash. This is my my bowl gouge. I made this handle. This is ash, which is an open pore. It has been treated with boiled linseed oil, but it was burnished. And just from me using it in my hands and how many hours that it's spent, it's just gotten more and more fine and shiny and burnished. Just use burnishes. And I think that to me, that is a more beautiful finish than the shiniest polish with the the buffing wheel and all. That looks better because it speaks about how much time this tool has spent in my hands. That has more attraction to me than shiny. That's my personal opinion. And some people think I'm crazy because I don't like super glossy shine finishes on wood, but if you want a super glossy shiny finish, I can point you in the right direction. You're not gonna get it from me. Yeah, shellac. I love shellac too. Shellac is a good finish. Shellac is a good finish. Ooh, that's already shining up really nicely. Paper towel is coming away clean. We're no longer removing material. That is a finish ready surface. We still have our jam, our fit. That's an absolutely ideal little fit for a ring box. It's good enough that you can pick it up by the lid, but it pops right open. That's what you're looking for. Very nice. So now we've got to part this off and finish the bottom. And that's exactly how we're going to do it. We're going to part it off and finish the bottom. So we're going to come in here with our 1/4 inch parting tool, and we're going to come down a little below it. Remember, you want your cut to be a little wider than your tool. That way that tool doesn't bind up in there. And just do the last little nib with the little pull saw so that nothing goes flying. Okay, so this really doesn't matter. Not real worried about that. What we're going to do is set a little bit of a tenon here so that we can just jam that on and turn our finish. We have just enough thickness that we can get a very slight undercut there. We'll come in. Slow the lathe down. Bring up our caliper. We're going to take the inside measurement of our recess. Transfer that here. There we go. We're going to take our parting tool here and do a little bit of a peeling cut. We're going to stop outside that line. Make sure we got straight sides. I'm taking this and using it like a little miniature skew, and I'm just going to very carefully touch that up just a hair. It's literally like using a mini skew, so it's just a bit big. Little mini skew style cut. That's a good jam. We've got a good jam right there. We'll definitely be able to turn that bottom. Now, there are some tricks you can use when you're doing something like this where it's a jam. There are some things you can do to ensure that you don't have it walk off or pop off. And that's mainly what direction you aim the energy of your cuts. So if I come in here with my 3/8 spindle gouge and I come across and I'm pushing, that cut is actually, as it's picking up the wood, right, it's lifting it away. So I've got pressure going there and there, which is pulling, right, the piece off. But end grain, you can cut it straight across, but you can also come from the inside out, which is preferred when you're hollowing end grain. But if I'm coming from the inside out, I'm pushing most of my pressure straight in, and then I'm still going to be lifting that cut a little bit, but it's moving more lateral parallel rather than wedging, if that makes sense. And let me show you, let's see if I can show you what I mean. If I do this right, which is wrong, I should pop the piece that direction. Now, I want to demonstrate it, so if it happens, that's good, but I really don't want it to happen. That makes sense. Well, let's see if, as I'm working this little knob off, if I can get it to start to jump, and it'll kind of want to pop off that way. Maybe it's just going to make a liar of me because I have a good sharp tool and I'm using good technique. So that's one way around it, is use a sharp tool and good technique. But the other way is to come from the inside out. Again, your pressure is primarily towards the center. And again, take light cuts. Okay, but there's no pressure trying to force that off the lathe. It's all pushing it down onto the jam. And you can take a little bit more adventurous cuts when you do that. And I think as I see this, I had this little rim, right? And as I see this, I see a design opportunity that I think looks really neat. So we're going to round this little rim off. We're just going to make it a bead, because that's kind of cool to have a little bead at the base. Very light cut. I'm going to roll that in. Just like that, and then we're going to roll it out. So by using very little force, very little pressure, right? By using very, very light touches, what I'm doing is letting the tool do the work, letting the wood come across the tool, and the tool cut the wood. I'm not forcing the tool, and I'm not creating any undue pressure which would make that happen. Okay? That is so light. It's a jam. It's a good jam. I mean, I'm cutting on it, but it's so light that just if I put too much tool pressure on there, that sucker's going to come right off. That's the ideal jam. That's what you want. All right, so we're going to roll this around and come across the bottom again. Very, very light cut. Really just letting the tool do the work. I'm pointing it in the direction I want it to go, but it's getting there. And the tool rest is just a millimeter too high, just a tiny bit too high. Beautiful. We're ready to sand. That's simple. Quick, easy, clean. Yeah, you can tape the joint, absolutely. There are all kinds of different ways, but really the best way, it's not, those ways aren't wrong. You can certainly, I've spent plenty of time with some painter's tape right there holding that on. It's not wrong. Ideally, you have a jam that fits just like that, and you're cutting lightly and cleanly enough that that's all the jam you need. That's ideal. However, it's not always easy to get that ideal. All right, 240 again. We can start at 240, and there's nothing. It's certainly nobody's going to hold it against you if you're not. Your mojo's not working today. You're just not getting that ideal jam. That's okay. There are ways to work it if you don't. It's not a competition. The only competition you have when you're at the lathe is with yourself, and that is, did you improve over the last time you turned? Did you learn something new? That's the competition. Are you getting better? That should be your goal. That's my goal. Every time I pick up the tool, what can I do differently than I did last time? What can I learn? How can I do it better? I had an absolutely devastating failure Friday night. Devastating. I wish I failed that spectacularly more often. I tried to keep the remnants so I could show. I don't know if I ended up keeping them or not. But I turned a very thin bowl out of a piece of burl, and it was really lovely, and I sanded right through the bottom. Lesson learned. See? There, that pressure. I wasn't paying attention. I was talking, and put too much pressure on, and that jam just released. And where did we go? Bounced into the leg again, I think. Yep. See, I was busy thinking about that fail. But failures like I had the other night, spectacular failures, are absolutely the best learning experiences. I did something really cool. It was really amazing. It was extremely delicate. It was beautiful. And I wasn't paying attention when I was sanding. Gee, when does that happen? Just now. And I lost the piece. That was a spectacular failure, and it was a really good thing that it happened to me. It's an even better thing that it did not happen on camera. All right, raise the grain, clean it off. I think I want to show you guys though what I lost, because it was cool. It would have been amazing. Watch out. Watch out. Move your rump. Move your big silly rump. Oh, did I throw it away? I thought I kept it. I moved a lot of stuff around today while I was setting up cameras. Maybe I didn't keep it. Maybe I didn't keep it. Crap. I moved stuff around a lot today setting up cameras, so I must have done away with it. That's a shame. Well, all I can tell you is if the piece had worked, it would have been stunning, and the failure was absolutely just as spectacular. So don't be afraid to fail. That's how we learn. We blow it. We figure out what we did wrong, and we come back and try again, and we do it better. All right, 320 grit. Clean it again. This is all going to get wiped down with Brad's Workbench Tongue Honey, which is a combination of pure tongue oil, beeswax, and carnauba wax. And it makes a fantastic finish. And what I like the most about it is an off-lathe finish, whereas this tongue wax is on lathe. You put it on, you got to let it rest for about a half an hour, and then you buff it on the lathe. Well, you get the same thing with the tongue honey, but you can do it off the lathe, which means you can keep going if you want to make another piece. So I have a tendency to use the tongue honey more often than I do the tongue wax. They're both great finishes. One's just gives me a little more time turning. Oh, I did keep it. Okay. So this was the rim of a lidded vessel made out of red Coolabah burl. That's the rim, and you can see I'm about 3 millimeters thick. Had a little dome in here. There's the lid. So this would have set on top of the vessel in here. And so I was sanding, and this little edge is where the inside of the bowl met the beginning of the dome of the vessel. And I sanded right through that puppy. Absolutely spectacular. Spectacular fail. It was awesome. Would have been a beautiful piece if I had saved it. But I learned more by blowing it. And I have to find another burl cap that's the right shape. But when I do, you can bet that the piece that I come up with is going to be pretty phenomenal. All right, 400 grit. We're going to sand with the grain here. We put some lines in here, so we're going to disguise those again. It's okay to come back over this. We're going to come back over it with the sanding paste anyway, so. if you guys can see that line or not. Oh, it was going to be phenomenal. It was an emulation of a Cindy Drosta piece. And I'm not necessarily trying to copy her as much as learn what she does so that I could take it to and use it for me. Use her techniques to make my designs, which is why I was making the piece. Plus, it just would have been spectacular. And it's okay. It's okay that I blew it. Honestly, I'm kind of glad I blew it because I learned a lot about that. Cutting the wood and sanding the wood and dealing with the wood at that fine of a thickness. I learned a lot. All right, here comes our shellac sanding sealer. About time for me to make some more. I only have about 3.5 ounces left. I do have some Super Blonde D-Wax shellac and some Everclear. I literally have a bottle of Everclear in my liquor cabinet solely for making sanding sealer and shine juice. I wrote on the bottle, finishes only. Besides, that stuff tastes awful. Did I? No, actually, I didn't. I looked at the lathe and looked at the piece and said it's time to stop. And I started cleaning up because I just, I knew I was pushing it. I was tired. I'd worked a half a day and, I knew I was tired and I knew I was pushing it. I don't know if I thought I was proving something to myself or what. I knew I shouldn't have been in the shop in the first place. I should have been resting. But I really wanted to get that piece started, hoping to have finished it. I mean, last weekend I made 2 really phenomenal pieces. So I was trying to, recapture that mojo this weekend. It just didn't work, and that's okay. We can't always win, All right, so when you work this sanding sealer in, your paper towel starts to grab. That's what you want. You want it to start grabbing. That's the goal. Start with the lathe slow. Wet part of the paper towel. Work it in. Starlings. Where's my shotgun? Flip over to clean part of the paper towel. Kick it up about 100 RPM. Rinse and repeat until the paper towel comes away clean. You're no longer removing material. That's a lesson you learn with time, Joe, and with age, is sometimes you really need to put the tools down and step away from the lathe. You really do. Before you it's one thing to break pieces, to have pieces fail and come flying apart or whatever, but especially when you're getting to the point where you're so tired that you might hurt yourself, walk away. This tool can do a lot of damage to you. And there's many a days when I've come away bleeding from just inattention. So if you're getting to that stage, walk away. Don't hurt yourself because you can actually do permanent major damage for a long time. Don't hurt yourself. Voila. Here we have just a beautiful little, it almost looks like a bullet, doesn't it? Here's the shell. There's the slug. It's a little stubby bullet. It's a 22 short. We get a little bit decent. We get some grain matching there. Not bad. Get some color. We still have our beautiful little friction fit. Well, there's a ring box. Look at that. Just a nice, sweet little ring box. Let's put some finish on it and wrap up our live. I'm going to get a paper towel here. Get our tongue honey. So I've got good wall thickness. I've got great thickness on the bottom. It's less than an eighth of an inch, more than a 16th of an inch. So, 3/32. We just want to put a nice generous coat of that tongue honey on. It lets that tongue oil soak into the surface of the wood, and where it will begin to polymerize and give us a nice water resistant seal. Make sure we get all those surfaces, and then the beeswax and the carnauba wax are left on the top of the surface, and when you wipe away the excess, it really buffs into a nice satin finish that I really find to be beautiful. And there we have it. We can focus down there. There we have it, our little ring box out of Purple Heart, and that will purple here with a little exposure to some sunlight and whatnot. But there we have it. So, simple project. Again, it took me 2 hours to talk through it. Turning it takes about 20-25 minutes. It's really a quick project. You can do 3 or 4 of these in a day. It's a fun project, and it looks nice. I'm going to be doing these. Are going to go for part of a collaboration with. Hang on. I got people texting me, people messaging me. So this is a collaboration with Nick Bacon, who makes rings. He makes really wonderful rings, and so for the gathering, I'm going to have a couple little ring boxes available that'll go probably to his booth, and you can, for an extra $30-40 you get the box. I don't know. He and I got to figure out how we're going to do that, but I'm going to whip out a couple of these. So there you have it. Honestly, it takes longer to describe each step than it does just to make the project. It's a quick, easy project. Mostly this was to test out the new camera, which I am very happy with. Learn some lessons like, hey, don't forget to change your input source, your audio input source from your laptop to your microphone. Things like that. We're working out the kinks. Don't forget the Worldwide Woodturners meets free every Wednesday night via Zoom. Go to worldwidewoodturners.org. Click Go to Meeting. If you have Zoom installed on your computer, it'll open up the Zoom Meetings app. Or if you don't need it. It'll open up a web page and use your browser as an interface. You can also put it on your phone or do a browser interface the same way. So you don't have to install anything. It's free of charge. There are demonstrations every Wednesday night from turners around the world. Wayne Clasper, who I talked about earlier in this live, he demonstrated last week or 2 weeks ago. So, we get world-class demonstrations every week from all over the place. We've had demonstrations from turners in New Zealand, Steve Twidell from Ireland, all over the place. It's really a lot of fun, and we get to see a lot of good work. We get to learn a lot of good tips and things like that. So check out the Worldwide Woodturners. I also happen to be the editor of our newsletter. You can see the newsletter at worldwidewoodturners.org. Click newsletter, download the PDF, print it out, share it with your friends. That's all I have for now. Thank you all for joining me.